And we are back on the Zero Hour. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and I've been following our next guest's work for some time. Mikey Weinstein is the founder and president of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. He is a graduate of the Air Force Academy himself. He is also a former federal prosecutor and defense attorney, spent more than 3 years with the Reagan administration before taking on the issue of religious freedom in the United States military, where he has uncovered some shocking practices, shocking in my opinion anyway. He is also former general counsel of Perot Systems Corporation. We could probably have a side conversation about that because I used to do business with them. He is the author of With God on Our Side, One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military, and he joins us now. Mikey Weinstein, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Richard. It's a pleasure.
Hey, listen, there was a specific case and a letter you wrote that sparked my interest in having you on right now. But as I mentioned in the intro, I've been following your work with the Religious Freedom Foundation for some time. So why don't we start with a little background, if you don't mind, in telling our folks why, as you put it, you believe there is an evangelical coup going on in the United States military right now.
Sure. Well, our foundation is the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, and we're on the web at militaryreligiousfreedom.org. We currently represent just slightly under 43,000 active duty United States sailors, soldiers, Marines, and airmen, cadets and midshipmen at the three major service academies, West Point, Annapolis, which is where my dad went, and the Air Force Academy, where, as you mentioned, I went, and four my kids went. This includes National Guard, Reserve, and veterans. Ironically, and fairly tellingly, Richard, about 96% of our clients are actually either Protestant or Roman Catholic. They're just being impressed for not being, quote, Christian enough. We represent 911 LGBT members of the military and around 13.5% of all Muslim Americans that are in the military. And, you mentioned my first book. I've written a second book. My wife has a book out that's done very well called To the Far-Right Christian Hater. You can be a good speller or a hater, but you can't be both. We have about 200, a little over 240 people that work in the foundation all over the country, and it's a very fair statement to say that as we speak on your show this day, the constitutionally mandated wall, Richard, separating spiritual and temporal, physical and metaphysical, church and state, and the technologically most lethal organization ever created by our species is really nothing but smoke and debris. It's gone, and we are doing our best to fight back against it so that people understand that where all the nuclear weapons are and all the other weapons of mass destruction, that we are still in this country a secular democracy. That's how we were designed. That's how we are to function. We are not a theocracy, and we don't have an approved religious faith, which is a type of Christianity known as dominion or fundamentalist Christianity as the approved solution to be an American citizen or to be in the U.S. military.
And a lot of people might not realize that it might strike people as a rhetorical statement on your part, but if so, they haven't really been following either your work or some of the other reporting that's come out about the extent to which, and by the way, I should say I have no hostility towards any form of religious belief or non-belief. I think most Americans don't, but I think most Americans assume, in this case incorrectly, I think they just assume, look, we've got a separation of church and state. Of any place where that's going to be sacrosanct, if I may use that word, it would be in the military. And yet your work, among others, has shown that there's enormous penetration of a form of evangelical Christianity that has and I'm paraphrasing, please correct me if I'm wrong, but a form of Christianity, you mentioned dominionism, that has a strong belief in what Christianity means for governance and government, there is enormous pressure on people, whether they are studying in military academies or members of the military. At various points, there is enormous pressure for people to conform to that, and that really very little is being done about it at top levels. Has what I've said, is that right? Does that sound right to you?
That's an excellent encapsulation. It makes me so happy I'm doing this show, because oftentimes I deal with media journalists. Some of them are well known that have a very little understanding of this. There's a quote I love to use here from H.G. Wells that is most apropos, Richard, and that is that civilization is a constant race between education and catastrophe. We have done such a terrible job of gutting our public school system of teaching government. They don't do it in colleges, anymore, and most of them. It's hard to find anyone, a young person that can name me the three branches of government and understand that what it means to say that we separate church and state. It doesn't mean we destroy church. It means that we separate them, and there's a good reason. Our founding, constitutional framers looked at European history, where much of the horrors that have been perpetuated and perpetrated had been by when men of the cloth had been men in political power. They looked at Cromwell in England. They remembered 1692, 320 some odd years ago in Salem, Massachusetts, with the witch trials. I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. And we decided we're not going to build a country like that here. We're going to separate that. And I tell people all the time that, when Jackie Robinson, Richard, I'm sure you remember him, right? He broke the color barrier in League Baseball in 1947. When he came on, his advent into Major League Baseball was not, I repeat, not an example of white Major League Baseball player victimization. It was white Major League Baseball player equalization. With the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, this wasn't white person victimization. It was white person equalization. With the rise of feminism, it wasn't male victimization. It was male equalization. With our fight, and we this December we'll hit a decade doing this, although I've been in the fight for almost 12 years before we formed the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. This is not Christian victimization. This is Christian equalization. Now you must share your toys with everyone. And we point to the Constitution for this. It's on the book. It's there. It's been interpreted that way. It's bad enough, as you mentioned, it's bad enough that this is in the state legislatures or in the sanitation department, police department, fire department, sewage workers, and stuff like that. But at least they don't have nuclear weapons. When it's in the U.S. military, Houston, we do not have a problem, issue, or challenge. What we're talking about on your show today, Richard, is a metastasizing national security threat internally to our country, every bit as much, and with breadth, magnitude, and significance as what we're facing externally by ISIS, a resurgent Taliban and Al Qaeda, the Mujahideen, and other types of religious terrorists. So what we're talking about is, if you will, the Christian version of ISIS. They don't like me saying that, and they're not just gently providing the gospel to helpless military subordinates. They are literally spiritually raping them, like what happened at Fort Meade with our client there, Deborah Schoenfeld.
And I want to get to Deborah Schoenfeld, but just a couple thoughts and perhaps a question before we do. Number one, we're talking with Mikey Weinstein, who is president of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, attorney and advocate. And I think it's also important for Christians who are listening to understand that when you institutionalize any form of belief, there are many forms of Christian belief. Your own Christian belief may be next to being victimized. You mentioned that a lot of Protestants and Catholics, that they form the majority of your clients, and I can understand that. I think anybody who believes in any form of religion or is a non-believer should be equally clear that this does not belong in our military. And I also want to say, before we go on, that I think it's very important. The military has always served a proud tradition in this country of being a path to advancement for every American, regardless of background or belief. And that if we take that away by creating a military test or religious test or forcing religious conformity, we have basically shut the door on. We've not only created enormous risk, as you've described, but we've shut the door on an essential element of what it means to be an American.
Absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. We don't judge the value of your American citizenship based through the prism of what type of religious faith, or if you accept a certain version. There's somewhere between 34 to 41,000 different versions of Christianity alone. And when you tell someone that they lack integrity, Richard, character, honesty, trustworthiness, courage, intelligence based on their particular chosen religious faith or lack thereof, why, Richard, there's no difference between that and telling someone they're stupid because of the color of their skin or because they were born a woman.
Right. We have absolutely tried to address that in this country and successfully done so. So let's talk for a second about, up to this point, I should say. So let's talk for a second about Deborah Schoenfeld, a woman who is Hindu in her belief. And what was the nature of her complaint which she filed after she was working at a dental clinic. What's the background there?
Yeah, Fort Meade, Maryland, which of course, not so ironically, is the headquarters of the National Security Agency. She was working at dental clinic number 3. She's a dental assistant. The place is inordinately, inextricably intertwined with this Dominionist, if you can Google it, Dominion Christianity or fundamentalist Christianity. She'd worked before. I mean, she's in her early 40s. She'd worked before at other dental places, never had any problems whatsoever. But the moment she got there, people became inordinately interested in what her religious faith was. She happens to be Hindu. She's developed in the last few years an interest in Wicca, which is not the religion you see with witches flying around on Halloween. It's an earth-centered based faith, and she realized that she would bring Asian Indian food in to eat on her breaks, and she would play some Asian Indian music. Her colleagues there brought in, I guess, American food and played constantly Christian music throughout the dental clinic. And she was accused of, because she had an interest in something as terribly deleterious to our national security, known as yoga. She was advised that yoga brings demons in, and she's summoning demons by practicing yoga. She didn't eat the right kind of food, didn't listen to the right kind of music. She wouldn't kind of get with the program, the Christian religious program in the office. When the office prayed for I guess it was the Obergefell decision, June 26th. The decision from the Supreme Court, authored by Anthony Kennedy, that made legal gay marriage. They were supposed to be praying for that collectively to help how terrible that was. It was just horrible. And finally, she'd had all she could take. She filed an EEO complaint, and the next day was separated. She's an Air Force contractor, but the Air Force are the puppeteers. The contractors are just the puppets. They sent her paperwork over to Bolling Air Force Base, and she lost her employment. She reached out to us, and in my many years of doing this, as I mentioned, February will be 12 years. I've never seen a case so openly shocking as this one. And I thought we'd seen everything. Her civil rights were eviscerated. And again, the concept of these people in this office do not understand that this is there's an Air Force lieutenant colonel who's the person in charge of this particular unit. He and his colleagues' personal Christian rights will always, Richard, always be trumped by the civil rights of their fellow American brothers and sisters. So this was just egregious, and I wrote a very in-your-face letter, and we now have companion ID investigations, that's the Inspector General, and equal employment opportunity investigations that are currently ongoing as a result of this. The story went viral literally all over the world.
Well, I mean, first of all, I have to say, and we're talking with Mikey Weinstein, head of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. As a writer, which is my day job, I really was impressed by your, as you put it, in-your-face letter that begins, "Sir," I believe it's directed to Lieutenant Colonel Dennis, a Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Holt. "Got witches? Question mark. Are you and your staff quite out of your constitutionally derelict minds?" Apparently, and by the way, we've been evolving away from witchcraft. Mikey Weinstein, I don't know if you know this, but you know when the last woman was imprisoned for witchcraft in Great Britain? The year?
I do not know that, no.
1944. So,
oh my, seriously?
So yeah, I'll get you the citations if you want them. So we've just emerged from this madness in the last century as Western civilization. We're going back into it. You guys are fighting it, which is terrific. Apparently in the Deborah Schoenfeld case, a colleague celebrated her dismissal and replacement with a Christian employee as replacing a devil with an angel. So what do ordinary people do who want to, first of all, educate themselves about this kind of it's frightening, because the U.S. military has far more power than any other, as you say, any other organization in the history of humankind, including the U.S. government, if you take it from a raw power point of view. What do people do to educate themselves about what's going on in the military in terms of what to do about it and in terms of perhaps contacting the right people?
Well, the first thing they need to do is just invest some time in going to our website. We have the audio, we have the visual. I strongly recommend a strong drink or wearing a seatbelt when you read what's there, because it's shocking. It is literally shocking. On our website at militaryreligiousfreedom.org, in the large window, we have a 10-minute video that's entitled "Halt." I dare anyone watching the show to sit down and watch that and not tell me that I don't care if they're watching a ball game over the weekend here. Get up and do something. The best thing they can do is, we're the point of the spear. We're a nonprofit charity. If they want to contribute to us, it's a full tax deduction. That's great. If they want to write the members of Congress, that's great. We have found that's been totally useless. It seems as though under Republicans, man exploits man, but under Democrats, it's just the opposite. Meaning, we've given up on our political party. They won't touch this because they're terrified that they're going to lose. Fundamentalist Christian money and fundamentalist Christian voters. So the best thing we can do is to expose this. We do it on a daily basis whenever we see it. We're extremely militant and aggressive in support of our members of the military because they can't be. But our militancy and aggression, Richard, is in support of the Constitution. And the Constitution makes it very clear in the First Amendment that there's a no establishment clause. There's free exercise, but there's also a Supreme Court case that the religious right doesn't like to recognize that came down in 1974, written by that noted liberal, wink, wink, William Rehnquist, making it clear that when you join the military, many of your constitutional rights will be severely abridged because the compelling governmental interest there is to maximize unit cohesion, good order, morale, and discipline. And we don't do that by denigrating people of different faiths, particularly when almost one-fourth of our military expresses no interest in any religion whatsoever. So that's it. We're the fighters. We're the point of the spear. It's not easy being in the arena, but we're fighting as hard as we can.
Well, keep up the good work. Please tell your wife that my experience of the spelling versus hating paradigm on the right is very similar to hers and yours. And anytime you want to come back on the program, please let us know because we're a big supporter of your work. Mikey Weinstein, director of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you.